Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Progressive Victory. And I wanted to talk about them for a few reasons. Number one, anytime Progressive Victory does anything, I get added about it now because Track Ukraine has relationships with a bunch of different organizations, and Progressive Victory is one of them. And they have been very cooperative in telling us information about progressive candidates and their views about Ukraine, and in both, being aligned with their general mission and making Ukraine a topic to be discussed, trying to cover Russian atrocities, and trying to continue American support for Ukraine. And because we have a relationship in that venue and we continue to collaborate, and the fact that technically, out of any other creator, I've been associated with PV the longest out of those still with them, outside of maybe, the horse lord of Washington. Besides him, I think he only beat me by literally a day. I think for these reasons, I get kind of added anytime that anything happens. But especially when it's somewhat Ukraine related. And there's been two big PV events. And because they've happened so close to each other, PV has had to fight kind of multiple fronts, right? And if we know anything about two front wars, is that they're usually not successful. So, and then the Plattner thing only made it worse. My goodness. So let's start from the beginning. So the week, or you could say like the weeks of pain that Progressive Victory went through, starts first with the Dar-Eliza, Claire Valdez, New York DSA elections and the primaries that occurred, where Dar-Eliza barely won her race, and Claire Valdez went in there and really, sweeped it. I mean, she took it. So in the aftermath of those results, PV got some targeted, you are rat effing the candidates of the progressive left, and how dare you, because PV asked Dar-Eliza publicly what her position on Ukraine was after she cut off communication with them post her getting an endorsement from the organization. It was very interesting to seek an organization's endorsement, get an organization's endorsement, an organization then asks you to clarify your position on Ukraine, go said organization, then the organization in question, Progressive Victory, is the one that gets the blame. At least when it comes to Twitch's top progressive, Hasan Piker, who again, I am not one to jump out of the way to do a Hasan topic. I see how people honestly obsess over Hasan, and I cannot be bothered. But when it gets into the topic of Ukraine, he just can't help but miss. And this is an interesting miss. But let's listen.
They are desperate. They will have to do so much more to atone for their backstabbing base. Now it's time to get back to teaming up with the DSA. Oh, God, I don't care about the fucking Progressive Victory or that other, sex pestiny cultist fake door knocking operation that doesn't knock on any doors and only talks about sex pestiny every day. Okay? Progressive Victory is another one. Yes, they in the last moment try to rat fuck Claire Valdez and Dar-Eliza and claimed that they were both insufficient in their support for Ukraine or some shit. I don't know what the fuck those guys are on. I don't care. I thought they were fine, but that shit was unacceptable. You know where my allegiances lie, okay? I'm with the DSA. I'm with DSA, the DSA, whatever you want to fucking call it. And that's it.
By the way, I don't want to highlight, I shouldn't be reading the chat. The last thing I should be doing is reading the Hasan chat. But I do notice the one that says Dylan Burns Victory. I don't know. I don't control PV, okay? Okay? PV supports Ukraine, its base supports Ukraine. I just pointed out the issue of the fact that it seems like nobody wants to talk about Ukraine on the campaign trail from this section of the left online, while also calling themselves anti-war candidates, but they have no answer for the biggest war currently raging on the planet. It's both ideologically inconsistent, it's a contradiction, it's something that should be addressed, and it's morally the right thing to do, right? And PV adjusted with that. And for that reason, oof, How dare they? Isn't it interesting too? Because if you listen to the way he frames it, he says they like rat effed her, and they rat effed her because they were not sufficiently supportive of Ukraine. That's not what happened. What they did is they said publicly, they didn't say don't support Daraliza. They said we have resources we would like to give to Daraliza's campaign. They would like to help her, you know, they would like to see her win, but as an endorsed candidate, she has completely ghosted the organization. Their staff will not talk to them. The candidate will not talk to them. Nobody managing their email will talk. They're just completely ghosted, despite a while trying to establish communication. And after being ghosted, specifically after being asked about Ukraine, a topic that she scrubbed off her website in February, and a topic that she has been dodgy on, they said as soon as they get their answer on Ukraine, oh, look at that, got the camera messed up. As soon as they get their answer on Ukraine, they will come to her aid. They will phone bank for her, and they will help her. And look, they have the ability to do good phone banking. You know, Hasan did about 90,000 calls for Dak's campaign, and for, I believe it was either Dak and Claire Valdez's. It wasn't him specifically, but his community. Progressive Victory was able to do 105,000 calls for Julie Gonzalez and Malat in Colorado. And we're still seeing the votes from Julie Gonzalez's race come in, and it looks like she's only 5 points down from Hickenlooper. And you've got local news journalists saying that it was a dereliction of their duty. It was a failure on their part not to have that conversation between Julie Gonzalez and Hickenlooper, to not host that debate because of how close the vote was, that they should have hosted a debate, and the fact that they didn't do that was a mistake, right? So they do have resources that they can bring forward, as we can see. They can do phone banking operations, right? Even if it's not 105,000, even if it's just 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, these phone banks matter. And when you think about how close Doc's race in the 13th district was, we're talking about 1 to 2 percentage points being the difference between victory and defeat in that race. You know, yeah, they are offering legitimate resources to help out, but you cannot expect an organization to spend its time while all these other campaigns, all these other candidates are asking like, we need help. We need help. We're going against this campaign that has a person who's absolutely terrible on corporate PAC money corruption, absolutely terrible on healthcare for all human beings, absolutely terrible on the issue of campaign finance reform, absolutely terrible when it comes to investments in public housing, absolutely terrible when it comes to tenants' rights, absolutely terrible when it comes to fighting against right to work legislation and being pro-union, absolutely terrible on both the war in Gaza and the war in Ukraine, the bloodiest war on the planet today. And you're asking them to literally be ghosted by a campaign and say, please keep ignoring us. Please don't engage with us. Please don't tell us anything. But we're going to go and give you 100,000 phone banks for nothing, for no conversation, for no dialogue, for no clarification, private clarification. Doesn't need to be public clarification. And they choose to ghost them. They choose to be silent. And then I hear whining. I don't need to be Progressive Victory. I don't need to go out there, either stick out my neck for them, because they've also made errors, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But I don't need to stick out my neck for them. But they didn't do anything wrong. They simply said, hey, we would like you to clarify your position on Ukraine. And then that was it. They didn't even unendorse her, which got them a lot of heat from the people who wanted to see them stick their neck out for Ukraine. Who was like, oh, you said you were going to support Ukraine and you wouldn't endorse candidates that wouldn't send aid to Ukraine, but then you endorsed Daraliza, not knowing that they endorsed Daraliza before Ukraine was a red line, before Track Ukraine worked with Progressive Victory to create these new standards. And so they were in this pickle, and they chose to not unendorse but to request clarification and to focus their efforts elsewhere. Their endorsement still clearly said to anybody that would go to Progressive Victory's website and think, do I vote for the leader of the Hispanic caucus, or do I vote for this DSA candidate coming in trying to, upset the political establishment and whatnot? And the PV answer was upset the political establishment. If you go to their website, that's what it still said. That is still screwing them. That is still an insufficient amount of loyalty. And that's the thing that's interesting is my loyalties are obvious, right? I've said this before. My political loyalty right now when it comes to the Democratic Party is winning. Okay, I want to see the Republican Party punished electorally in an overwhelming wave, because I believe the current state of the Republican Party is dangerous for the long-term health of the American Republic. There are problems in the Democratic Party as well. People know I'm generally a pro-gun guy. People know that, I don't agree with how Obama or even sometimes Biden handled the war in Ukraine. People know that whatever, there's any number of critiques. But this is necessary, I think, for the country to move on. I think it's necessary. It's necessary for the Republican Party to be a party that isn't kind of a threat to the foundations of the Republic. And it's necessary for the Democratic Party to think past Trump, to think bolder than Trump, for the Republicans to think past Trump, for the country, for other organizations, for Courage for Democracy, for DSA, for the Working Families Party, for farmer labor, whatever organization, for them all to think past Trump and towards making the country better, making the country more stable, making it a better place to live. That's my philosophy. So I have loyalties when I speak about things, right? I obviously want elections to go one way or another way. I have opinions. But when I talk about an election and I talk about candidates, I don't talk to them as if they're my they're my friend, or because we're politically aligned in one way, critiquing them or asking better of them is beneath me, or is actually a betrayal in some sort. Because something that I found very interesting as we did certain amounts of these Track Ukraine rankings is people demanded a certain amount of loyalty, right? Dylan, weren't you a Bernie bro? Dylan, aren't you on the American left, or you claim to be on the American left? Somebody gets very pretentious and full of themselves and up their own ass. You claim to be. Yet here you are grading progressive candidates in a negative way. How can you? How dare you? How dare you talk about those progressive candidates in such a manner? And I just cannot care. I just cannot care. Your candidates, I don't care how much you've wanted to protect them. I don't care how much you like them. We grade them based on their policy outcomes and on their stances. Darla has no good policy position on Ukraine. Zero. She has expressed zero good positions. Claire Valdez has expressed some support for refugees. That's it. It is the largest, most violent war on the planet, and they refuse to talk about it, and then they describe themselves as anti-war. It is a contradiction. It is something that obviously has to be addressed at some point. So, well, why can't we wait until after the primary? Oh, so after they've already won or after they already have the power. Okay, we should have asked the same thing of Tulsi. Maybe if we asked more questions of John Fetterman before he became a senator or before he became the Democratic primary nominee, maybe things could have gone a little differently if we had more foresight, if we had more knowledge on specific opinions. I'm not saying these are the same people. I'm just saying the idea that because of your personal political loyalties to Democratic Socialists of America, which is flawed, it is a flawed organization. The people who control their foreign policy have no depth of knowledge, and I'm saying this very bluntly. I don't think any of them could defend the organization's values from a foreign policy perspective. And so most of the candidates who have taken those perspectives on Ukraine have ran away. They've ran away from questions. They've ran away from confrontation. They've ran away from clear policy on the matter. And they don't want to address it. Because in order to take over the Democratic Party, you cannot piss off all of the Democratic Party primary voters. And when 95% of Democratic Party primary voters support Ukraine, talking about the fact that your candidate might not, that's a problem. That is a negative. And so a common refrain we hear is, we just don't want to talk about it on the campaign trail. Well, then what can we believe that you're really going to stand by? If you won't stand by it now, why would we believe you would stand by it later? We are not going to pause gradings based upon any amount of loyalty for any organization. And you should not expect an organization like PV to say, well, we like DSA, so they're DSA endorsed, so we can ignore a gaping hole the size of the bloodiest war on the planet. Honestly, the fact that Progressive Victory of all organizations is the progressive organization drawing a line here is embarrassing for the American left. On one hand, I could say, oh, Progressive Victory, you're so great, you're so amazing, you're so fantastic. But honestly, this is like the minimum. This is like the bare bar. It's like Progressive Victory passed with a C minus, and the rest of the American left is like just like F minus, minus. Like I'm like, goddamn Z minus, Z minus. Boy, it's just, if you don't show up, if you don't express anything, if you don't say anything about this war, and then we hear you speak about war in such vigor and such detail and such brutality and of such passion of, oh God, genocide is so bad. Oh God, genocide is so awful. Oh God, ethnic cleansing is terrible. Oh God, the death of these children blowing up. Oh God, the destruction of these villages, the destruction of these homes, the destruction of these communities, the destruction of a family legacy, graveyards being destroyed, architecture being destroyed, history being erased. Oh my God, it's so terrible. But don't ask me a fucking question about the bloodiest war on the planet, where the largest amount of ethnic cleansing that's currently happening on the planet is spreading across Donbass, is spreading across Zaporizhia, is spreading across the Dnipro region, the Sumy region, the Kharkiv region, and I'm supposed to look at these candidates and take them seriously? No! I will never take them seriously. I will never think they're anti-war. I will think they're fashionable. I will think they went to the activism store, they took a walk through it, they looked around, they found the Palestinian flag, they wrapped themselves in it, and then they left. And then they left. If you are an activist and you care about one war because you cannot help to just concentrate on every dead baby, I get it. It's fucking awful to see old women's corpses and elderly dragged out of nursing homes, and to see home after home destroyed. It is draining. It fucking robs your soul. I get it. But you're running for federal office. You're running to control foreign policy. You're running to be a serious progressive alternative to the establishment. And you're running in a party that fucking hates the Russians. And you're gonna run as if you're scared to talk about them? As if you're scared to talk about the bloodiest war on the planet? You are walking around with a big target on your back, a big flaw, a huge blind spot, and they don't even realize it. They don't even realize it that people like Haley Stevens, if Abdul decided to take a position that sounded like it came from DSA's like international committee or whatever, if he decided to take that position, which he hasn't, the only things he said on Ukraine so far have been positive, but if he did, Haley Stevens could outflank him on the issue. The fact that the head of the Hispanic caucus could be more progressive on that issue, to the point where the DSA candidate stands for stopping genocide in one place, but then standing aside ethnic cleansing in another, like, let's not take any actions. That's very bad. I mean, I like refugees. I wouldn't turn the boat away. That's bad. That's a contradiction. That's something that eventually someone will lambaste. Someone will critique. Trek Ukraine's the nice guy. Okay, we're not Razom. We're not like the American Ukrainian Committee, like going around like shaking hands necessarily. We do like a big poster that's red. It's not positive. But honestly, we're the nice guys. Honestly, all we do is we go, we grade, we say there's their policies, and that's it, and we continue to highlight the issue. We don't go around saying, look, Darliza, they stand by while genocide happens. Holocaust hurts Hartzell. There are messaging strategies that people have thrown at me that have left a bad taste in my mouth, and I said, I don't think so. I think that's a bad idea, right? To go a certain like activist slant in our messaging strategy. I focused on data accumulation and just showing the answers for what they are and grading them coldly, as well as showing the bluntness of the war, the coldness of the war, because I thought that was the most successful strategy to message across. But the fact that PV acknowledged this gaping hole and tried to address it, why won't anyone let them live it down? Why won't anyone let them live it down? Mind you, for some people it will not be enough because of the fact they endorsed Doc, because of the fact that they weren't always putting this red line in the sand, because they still associate with content creators and people who don't have good positions on the war in Ukraine. But at the end of the day, they are the only organization that stuck their neck out in any capacity on this issue. And it's not a question of whether I think PV is the greatest group ever. They're just the only one in this segment of the American left that decided that it was a priority to deal with the largest and bloodiest war on the planet right now. You want to know how legislators figure out if something's a priority to their base and if they should do something? Phone calls. We put phone numbers on all the posters for a reason. This attention could do positive things. Them trying to drag that attention is a positive thing. And them trying to ask for the bare minimum of the candidates they endorse and are willing to offer resources for is not just a positive thing. It's the bare minimum. So it's just, I just can't get, it's a rat fucking. Like, I don't even think Hasan really fully understands what the critique was. Or he fundamentally doesn't agree with the critique because he thinks doing nothing is perfectly permissible. But he hasn't fully really clarified what his policy prescription is for now, what the United States should do. So we're just kind of stuck at Ukraine's on the back burner. Maybe we'll get around to it eventually.
All these other like outside groups, they can turn around and make weird decisions and try to fucking, try to be a thorn on the side of these bold candidates. They just have standards in org for Ukraine. Please move on. Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Trying to fucking make a mountain out of a molehill in the last moment on close races. Well, Clara's wasn't close, but Dottie Eliza's was. That's unacceptable.
Unacceptable. This is whining. Oh, that's unacceptable. Look, in his mind, socialists win. Socialists win. Socialists win. That's it. Socialists. The socialists just need to win. Whether they're good on this, good on that, the socialists need to win. Here's a question. Let's say one of them believed that we should still send weapons to Israel. Would that be a permissible thing if they were still a socialist? If they didn't want to act to what you defined your audience as the most atrocious thing happening on the planet, genocide, ethnic cleansing, ethnic cleansing is like obvious to like anybody who goes look at the West Bank for half a second. But somebody looks at that and they say, of course they need to act on that. Okay, makes sense. How can someone describe themselves as anti-war and not have a position on the largest war on the planet that America is directly involved in when we disarm the nation state in question? Like, over minute This isn't minute. It's the fact that they didn't have a position, and Daraliza was actively burying her old position against any and all military aid. Any and all. She burned that in February, probably around the same time that Mondami and all these other high-profile progressives were looking into endorsing her campaign, whether she scrubbed that to please them, whether she scrubbed that in order to not be asked questions, whether she scrubbed that because she started to move away from that position. Like, we got no clarification. Even when the New York Times editorial board directly asked her the question about if she supported aid to Ukraine, she ran away from it. Do we want bold progressives or do we want cowardly progressives? Do we want progressives that'll come out and say, no, I will. I mean, even I would respect her more if she said, I will not give money to Raytheon, a company that profits off the death if you, at least then I'd be like, at least I know where she stands. But the fact that she just runs away and away and away, it shows a lack of seriousness and left-wing foreign policy and being able to actually get in there and do anything. Maybe one reason that we have progressives in office right now, but they have such little impact on foreign policy is because they don't have any vision. I mean, even going up to AOC, one of the most well-known progressives in the country. I would even say one of the most legislatively effective of the new class post her replacing Joe Crowley, you know, of the squad, so to speak. Some of them are out of office. Some of them are still in office. Some of them are trying to get back in office, like Cori Bush. That's a whole other bag of worms, her opposition to sanctions on Russia. But she goes to the Munich Security Conference. She gets asked about Taiwan, and she looks like she just lost her car keys. And she's trying to like find them in every corner of the room. She's completely out of her comfort zone. That's not good. It's not good that seems to be a problem with the left being able to engage seriously on these issues and to not only be able to go up there and talk about just policy wonkery and like the details, but like make a moral case. Is there any moral case for not sending aid to Ukraine? Probably not. I mean, whatever case that could be made, that could be advocated, that is believed by the cadre of people that are either advising these people or that they came from the DSA like circles. I don't know. I can't say what those conversations were like or exactly why she's so scared of taking a stance on Ukraine, but she was. And when you have an organization like PV, which, let's say, wears its opinions on its sleeve, grab them by the platter, my goodness. I think, yeah, it makes sense that they took the stance that they did. And PV has always been a somewhat rambunctious organization. And hell, even if Hasan is right that they screwed her, he isn't. But let's say he is. I mean, isn't this also politics? And why is the critique on just PV? Even if they did screw her, shouldn't the critique also be on how Daraliza made it so easy to screw her? Like, if you are weak on an issue and you're scared of an issue and you run away from an issue and then that issue gets addressed and immediately once this, you know, the Ukraine thing got any attention, like, she ran away from it. That's also her fault for running away. You know, we got bold, new, strong progressives. We're fighting against war. Just don't ask about the largest war on the planet. But we're fighting against war. We're fighting against, just don't ask about the one. Like, at some point you have to say, yeah, that's the candidate's fault. But if you treat them like you're their friend, or you want personal close access to these people, or it's all just about getting a certain ideological ilk in office rather than actually seeing if they're good on all the policies, knowing their opinions, having transparency, seeing that they can engage with the public, seeing that they can take critique, adapt, and like be fun. No, it's not. It's the primary isn't even a process by which you get the best candidate. The primary becomes a process by which you just slot in whoever you support. The primary is also a process by which candidates are tested, you find out details, and getting angry at an organization that endorsed your person for taking part in the process. It's just ridiculous on his face. And like the indignance and like, come on, they just have standards as an org for Ukraine. Please move on. Got to bring their comment on stream. How dare you? How dare you? It just all seeps of, well, they deserve it. She deserved to not be asked about that. She deserved to have their support. She deserved to get away from these hard questions. It's just, I mean, how do you think Donna Brazile can get? I mean, Donna Brazile gave Hillary Clinton answers that she did not deserve, but it happened anyway. How are you supposed to be the insurgent, upset army? You know, the ones taking over the Democratic Party, if at every turn you're just like, oh my God, basic scrutiny. We're getting screwed, guys. Like, there are times when the progressives got screwed. Donna Brazile giving Hillary Clinton the debate questions in advance. That's clearly the establishment trying to screw Bernie Sanders, trying to stop him from becoming the nominee. That's a clear example that happened. We know it to be true, right? That's something you can be angry about. How does that turn into, you ask basic questions of our candidate? Oh my God, you're screwing them. I can't, but no, don't ask about the largest war on the, no, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And the amount of whining attached to it is the most insulting part.
They just have standards in org for Ukraine. Please move on. Yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Trying to fucking make a mountain out of a molehill in the last moment on close races. Well, Clara's wasn't close, but Dottie Elisa's was. That's unacceptable.
By the way, a molehill. Her position could be like completely no support. For Hasan, considering that was his position for a long time, whether that's still his position is not 100% clear. That's not a mountain out of a molehill. That is a mountain.
Okay. Especially because you thought that their take on Ukraine was too ambiguous. What are you, fucking insane?
What if their take on Palestine was too ambiguous? Would it be the same? I mean, what was the reaction? Does anybody have the clip of him talking about Scott Wiener? I think it's Scott Wiener, right? Scott Wiener, the guy who's running in California to replace Nancy Pelosi's seat. Now, mind you, his position is that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. The problem for Scott Wiener is that he got on the position during the primary when it was most politically advantageous, making many people think that therefore that position, no, that position's not good enough. But not only is it not good enough to not get a vote, that's so bad that you can harass a gay man going to a queer march to participate, in LGBTQ plus activism, that he's not allowed to be there. A future congressperson is not allowed to be there, and it's okay to harass him away from these events because he used to support Israel. That perfectly fine. Hasan, a non-homosexual, is saying that type of treatment of a queer man at an LGBTQ plus event, that's permissible because he used to have the wrong position. But a woman wanting to have a position of an action, woman, man, doesn't really matter. This woman wanting to have a position of an action after we disarmed a country and then they get ethnically cleansed, that is a molehill. It's nothing. And that's her current position. But you can't even ask her that in public without screwing her. But that man's old position, you can harass him in public. You can get him kicked out of LGBT events. As a straight person can get them out. By the way, the person who kicked them out called themselves queer. And then they said, I'm queer, but I'm like queer aesthetically. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're just, I'm trying not to say you have slur. But you're homo curious, maybe. You're aesthetic homo curious. But the activist angle here is that's fine. Asking questions about this candidate, not fine. It's okay to harass gay men out of queer events for positions that they used to hold. It's not okay for political organizations to ask candidates directly about their positions, candidates they've endorsed. That is screwing them. It doesn't make any sense to me. The only way this makes sense is if the only thing that matters here is getting his cadre in office. Like, I don't care if they're DSA. I don't care if they're not DSA. They're still candidates, and they deserve to be treated as candidates. They're still cogs moving into a machine, and they still need to be tested that way. They are not your friends. If you take anything ever from any of my political streams, politicians are not your friends. They are your power broker, first and foremost.
That's why. So you thought someone's opinion on Ukraine was too ambiguous, and therefore you were willing to throw the race in the direction of someone whose take on Israel is unambiguous?
They didn't throw the race. They said, we will offer you resources if you clarify your position, which, by the way, her position is ambiguous. Her position wasn't that ambiguous. Okay, she clearly avoids any question asking her directly if she supports aid, and she had statements on her website that was against aid until they removed it in February. So to me, it's really not that ambiguous, but they want to keep it ambiguous because it's better for it to be ambiguous. So that's why it's being talked about in this manner. But again, they didn't throw it. They said, we'll give you all the resources you want. All you have to do is clarify your position. And they chose to ghost them.
A curd
again,
is a curd.
We have to, this is like,
Black Pilled Kiwi has donated $10. Long time no stream. Anyway, you should get a supercut of Russians saying their unhinged shit about Ukraine and question leftists if it meets the same mark as Israelis on Palestine.
I mean, we could do this all day. I got one right here today. Russian politician. This guy is the only member of his party, by the way. I do want to clarify that. Stated in an interview with Ivan Muranov that 20 to 30% of Ukraine's population should be exterminated. Are you calling for 20 to 30% of Ukraine's population to be exterminated? They all must be exterminated. If it were 50%, even 50% would have to be exterminated. You can go listen to the full quote if you want. It's very clear that he thinks that like the Ukrainian identity is like this Nazism or like entwined in such a way that that sector must be destroyed. And he starts saying 30% to 50% is the range for that sector of society. Right. So, I mean, technically, it could be more than 50% because most Ukrainians don't want to be Russian. So I guess it probably would be more than 50% in his actual worldview. But that type of statement like comes out regularly. That one of the more extreme ones. But I mean, here is Sputnik, Russian state TV, as of like, what, 10 days ago? Good morning, Kiev. And then they posted this video. How does anyone have an ambiguous opinion about this? Okay, and what's the ambiguity here? Somebody described to me. They're putting like YouTube like copyright free music over Kiev burning, over civilian apartment blocks on fire. And we're supposed to say, well, you know, ambiguity on this from an anti-war candidate is like particularly okay. And if they run away from questions on it, we just need to be quiet and wait for the election to be over. And then they'll tell us very politely what they'll decide to do after we've given them power. Again, this is politics team sports over like politics being politics. We'll finish with the Hasan thing, and then we'll continue. We'll move on to something else.
Where are your fucking standards?
Can I also say the reaction from people at PV mostly was like, oh, well, maybe we could talk to Hasan, we could clarify and like XYZ. Like they're completely still in the like, come on, let's work with them, let's do it. Like, mind you, this is the same guy who called them a Zionist pack back in the day. They said it was like Destiny Zionist pack and had the fucking 9-digit zip codes. You're talking about houses within 3 houses. Talking about basically people's addresses on screen after Empanado was like sharing that online. Again, this is the same guy, and they're still willing to stick out their neck, see like maybe we can find a way to work with him because they understand that his audience and what he brings with him would be so beneficial for the progressive movement that they're willing to like have Hasan like literally smack them across the face over and over and over again and still like shake his hand and work with him, right? That's one part of politics I could not do, right? This is one of the reasons why I feel more comfortable kind of doing combat journalism, because like when you're on the front line, you tell somebody to F off, like, you know, you can, like, everything is like hell on earth. Like, it is what it is. In politics, you got to like bite your tongue when somebody like treats you like absolute garbage. I can't. I don't think I can do that. Either way, though, like, it's bizarre the amount that they are willing to put up with in order to have to work with people across the progressive aisle, let's say. They're doing what I could not.
That's bullshit. It's record behavior, okay? Be more disciplined.
Be more disciplined. Our candidates were not prepared for basic questioning. The real issue is we were not disciplined enough when asking those basic questions. Oh my God, man.
Anyway. Getting back to it, if they lend their support to Mail-Out's campaign, great. They wanted me to promote Taiwan. When I interviewed with them, their main concern was my website said cooperation with China. Ay, ay, ay.
Oh my God. They don't want 25 million people to be carpet bombed by the Chinese. Oh my God. Here's another thing. If you're an American socialist, be an American socialist. You're not a Chinese socialist. You're not a fucking Cuban socialist. You're not a Russian socialist. You're not a Mongolian. So I don't know what the fucking. You're not with the Khmer Rouge. Not a Vietnamese socialist. You're an American socialist. There's like Eugene Debs is like a thing. Like you can pull from American socialists. You don't need to hear someone say, I'd like to know what your stance is on Taiwan, and be like, oh my God. If there is a war over Taiwan, the world economy will have drastic implications. The civilian implications would be drastic, as Taipei is one of the most urbanly dense locations in the world. If you got rid of the mountainous regions of Taiwan, Taiwan would literally be the densest country on the planet. One of the densest. It already is one of the densest, but it would be one of the densest countries on the planet. To have a bombing campaign of Taiwan would be a civilian disaster. To have a war over Taiwan would be an economic disaster, a diplomatic catastrophe. Trying to avoid it and understanding what the stance is on Taiwan is perfectly permissible. They don't make a big stand on Taiwan right now. You want to know why? Because there's only too many things you can like go out and say, you know, we're taking a stand on this, taking a stand on that, and get heat. And one could say, well, shouldn't Progressive Victory be standing up on Taiwan and all these issues from the get-go? When you're facing down waves and waves of brain-dead critique, and this is the level we're talking, I mean, brain-dead, like, how dare you ask questions about China? How dare you ask questions about Ukraine to our candidates? That's not very leftist of you. Like, when you're facing down so much of that, you can drown in that. And so honestly, considering Ukraine is the country that is being bombed and is where the largest war on the planet is happening right now, I think them choosing their battles at the moment makes sense. But the idea that they'd want to know your position on China, they'd want to know what you mean by cooperation with China. Cooperation on China on what? Climate change? Fantastic. Subjugating 25 million people to a proletarian dictatorship not of their choosing? Not as good. Not as great. And we can say they're part of China all you want if you want to frame it that way. But, you know, the United States was part of Great Britain until it wasn't. You know, the idea of a settler state eventually going off and doing its own thing from its original mother nation, quote unquote, being something that's so hard for us to understand. I find that doubtful. I find that very doubtful.
Yes.
Also, I'm going to take a swing here and say Austin for MD. If he did take the stance of, I don't care about Taiwan, I don't know how well that's going to be doing in Maryland. I don't think Taiwan exactly is the main energizing issue right now, but I don't know. Marylanders don't seem to be hostile towards the Taiwanese.
If you're
Maryland University speakers, though, on the issue of Taiwan, maybe Maryland University has a different opinion. Long dead story. Don't want to talk about it.
If your organization is demanding accountability that is in line with American empire, then, you know, you have to really reconsider what you fucking care about. Okay.
I genuinely think that Hasan's foreign policy opinions are not that better than Asmongold. Like when I listen like to how he talks about it, like when I watch Asmongold talk about foreign policy or even domestic policy, it just seems like he's like slotting into team sports and then making it like he's like taking the vileness and turning it up to 11, right? Where he starts talking about camps or this person deserved that because the edginess, he wants to drag attention, or he just is like letting himself slide very simply into an us versus them mentality towards his fellow Americans. And really, there's not a lot that that like holds a lot of America together outside of like uniting philosophies and the like law and order that like immigrants from Scotland, Ireland, India, China, and from all these different places all around the world come together and live under. And so when you turn our politics into a basic us versus them mentality, I think that's very dangerous for the country. I think for its general stability, for our political discourse, for it being at all productive. When I listen to Hasan talk about foreign policy, specifically, it is an us versus them mentality. It's just the us is the workers, it is the progressive left, it is the anti-establishment, and the them is the establishment. And the way that you choose what issues that you stand by or care about is based upon what they care about and what you care about. And because they're the establishment, what they stand with is bad, and what we stand with is good. And so if Hillary Clinton says ethnic cleansing in Ukraine is bad, then obviously something is up and we shouldn't care too much about it, and it shouldn't be a priority of ours. Because if it serves American empire that Ukraine win its war, then obviously it would be better for us to abandon the country that we disarmed to its invader, occupier, and colonizer. That is the progressive stance. The progressive stance is to ask our candidates not to speak up about ethnic cleansing, not to speak up about occupation, not to speak up about colonialism, not to speak up about American imperial hubris leading to these wars, and then thinking we can just pull the rug, pull the lever, and just walk out on it. That's perfectly permissible because it could make a Fed happy. This is shallow politics, and this will not survive any general primary takeover of the party. Whatever you want to say, it's the primary elections, the general elections. These types of contradictions will eventually be exposed, pressed upon, and taken advantage of. They will. Whether it's going to be, you know, in the primary season, in the general season, down the line, it's you just saying in every instance, I stand against American empire, and that's the end of your foreign policy. Like, okay, so your stance against American empire is to abandon those who were the victim of American decisions to the consequence of how does this help? It doesn't help in any way. It's just an easy answer, and therefore that's the answer. You need to really reevaluate what you care about when you care about the largest war on the planet. I'm anti-war, by the way. Okay. Thank you very much. So yeah, I would say Hasan hasn't really improved at all on the issue of Ukraine, and when it comes to his public engagement, he only seems to talk about it in order to like praise John Mearsheimer or say why people are talking about it or why you would, you know, why you would do any sort of purity testing on the issue of Ukraine. So, I mean, I don't expect anything positive on that front. The most I can hope from Hasan, legitimately, is that he just leaves the Ukrainians alone. That he just doesn't speak about them, doesn't speak about the war. And as much as I care about the war being centered, the more he speaks about it, the more I just get unbelievably frustrated listening to it. So that's the first thing around PV. The second thing that happened around PV, okay, and this is when taking a stand goes a little too far, is what they said about Troy Jackson. I don't know if you guys saw, but Progressive Victory released a statement about Troy Jackson after Graham Plattner was essentially banished from the main election, after it was revealed that he has more credible accusers against him. Now, PV was behind Graham Plattner. Not only were they behind Graham Plattner, they said, grab him by the Plattner when endorsing Plattner. Now, they thought probably that was funny. In retrospect, it's not very funny. How I understand the philosophy PV has when it comes to its messaging is, we are for youth. We are for young people. Progressive Victory is a youth-led organization, and so we speak to the youth. We speak in their language. We want our organization to be talked about, and so we'll go out and we'll swing from the hip. We'll swing from the hip, and we'll be funny about it, and we'll be edgy about it. We won't, say anything that goes strays away from our values, but we're not going to be going around saying things that just to get along. And that philosophy leads to those types of posts.
Just in case there's a Freedom Fuel station on your way to and from the front line.
Thank you for the Freedom Fuel supply of a $50 donation. I appreciate that. That'll allow me to get as much Freedom Fuel as physically possible. I appreciate the heavy supply of Freedom Fuel. I now feel the freedom in my fuel. Okay. So.
Occurred is occurred.
Oh, another $5. Man, you guys are coming in.
Cryptic_command has donated $5. Congrats on the promotion. You went from a medium Azov guy to massive Azov. That's big for you.
That was funny. Bad Empanada responded to me after I was laughing about not being able to use the words Senator Totenkopf to describe Graham Plattner, which would have been funny. I was building up the nicknames. He said it's funny because you're such a massive Azov guy. I was like, wow. I had no clue. We're talking about first corps or 12th. Either way, I didn't know I was so high up in the system. My goodness. I thought it was medium, not massive. Mazov, it seemed. Anyway, it was very funny. Where was I? Oh, yes, but Progressive Victory has this idea about their messaging that this type of edginess actually appeals to their base. And when they talk to their people, in the Discord channel, that they like it. Now, I think that engaging in some scuffles are okay if you pick a good position, a good trench, if you will, to embed yourself in, to defend your position and be able to dig your heels in. But when I see PV going out there saying grab him by the Plattner, which is now deleted, so obviously that's not one they stand by, or coming out and calling Jasmine Crockett a bitch, well, I don't see exactly what that accomplishes. I think it probably just sets people against the organization, makes them look unprofessional. But to the organization's messaging people, they think that it appeals to their base, which might be true to the people who are already there. But I imagine if they want to get better than 110,000 phone banks, and they want to be able to hit those phone banking numbers, not always necessarily tied to larger content creators boosting their efforts, and they want to hit those numbers faster so they can compete with Hasan's numbers, then they're going to have to appeal to a wider purview. Now, maybe there are people who see that messaging, who are appealed to, that come in that weren't going to come in before. Maybe. I would also say that if you're trying to take these strong stances that kind of break the mold with other sections of the left, but are definitely going to make you more acceptable and more electable in both primary and general elections, but will piss off the certain cadre, I don't know if you also need to add extra barbs, extra thorns, and extra edginess to your messaging when you're already, perfectly willing to engage in clapback messaging. I don't think that's necessary. And I think that there's going to be instances where in the future PV is going to be trying to do something and you're just going to see screenshots of grab him by the platter, or calling a very influential black politician, black woman, that word, which, you know, in a party that has a lot of black women in it, could be a problem, at least to messaging for certain people. Now, one could say they're not trying to go for Jasmine Crockett's people. They're not trying to go to the people that this wouldn't appeal to. Okay, but I do think that it's going to come with a certain stigma. It is going to come with a certain reputation. It is going to come with a lack of professionalism that is viewed on the organization, that you need to do the extra work if you want to do this. I wouldn't, but it's not my organization. You need to do other things to make yourself seem extra professional. 110,000 phone banks? That's boom. That's one thing you could do. Going out and airing unverified claims of abuse of staff on Troy Jackson like PV did, that is not something that gives you that appearance of professionalism. That is not something that allows you to navigate with edginess and lose some people, but then win them back with both your results and the fact that you've been professional when it comes to other avenues. Because if you're trying to say, look, I'm not going to pull my Daraliza endorsement because we don't want to look unprofessional, where we give an endorsement and we pull an endorsement based upon new criteria that people will generally not like that. Okay, I think that there is a statement there about professionalism and the organization not looking like they just like try to sabotage, because if they would have pulled the endorsement, that could have actually affected the campaign in a totally different way. If they truly wanted to F Daraliza like Hasan said they did, they would have pulled the endorsement and it would have been a 10 times bigger story than it was. Instead, they lightly suggested, and they get the full force of they are like the evil betrayers, right? It's not particularly fair, but that's how things played out. But if you're going to do that, then you can't also go out there and decide you're going to live vet on Twitter candidates with unverified information. Because from PV's perspective, oh my God, we really messed up with Graham Plattner. We went out and said, grab him by the Plattner. We look like we aligned ourselves with, oh boy, that's not good. So let's be extra careful when it comes to this next person. So we're going to make everyone aware right now, as we have this super sped up primary process in Maine about this person's abuses, before getting them confirmed after they made some calls in Maine and the rumors bubbled back up to them. Whether it is true, whether it isn't true, from the moment I read those messages, I knew it was a mistake. I knew that even if it was ended up being true, maybe they could salvage it better, but they're in the same way that if you pull an endorsement at the last second outside of the most extraordinary circumstances, people will see it as unprofessional, people will see it as unreliable, and people will not want to work with you. If you are live on Twitter, on the public feed, scrubbing somebody's record, airing unproven rumors, then you're also sabotaging your image. You're also sabotaging that image of professionality. You're also doing the same thing you wanted to prevent by not pulling the Daraliza endorsement. Now, PV realized this, right? They realized it a little too late, you know, kind of after the fact that they posted it, and guess who ran with it? The right-wing media circuit, you know, other people who wanted to sabotage Troy Jackson. I'm sure other people in the primary might weaponize that against them. And after taking already that one stance against these DSA endorsed candidates in New York, coming out and doing this actually objectionable thing to Troy Jackson, who is also a DSA endorsed candidate. You know, it seems like you're choosing too many fights at the same time. And even if most of them are moral, even if all of them were moral, there's only so much you can do at once. Only so much you can do at once. And so it seemed that they mean too close to the sun. They wanted to be the one getting the cutting edge story out to the public, I guess, maybe saving the day from Troy Jackson's potential abuses, but instead had to release this multi-paragraph apology message, which was not received particularly well, I will say. Not received particularly well. So, right now, How would I judge progressive victory? I would just judge them as dreamers. Dreamers in the fact that, number one, they're largely a socialist organization, and so they dream of a different economic system. They dream of what content creators and political action groups, political organizations like them can do, and the 110,000 phone banks is just one example of the result of that dreaming, which was positive. But often they maybe dream a little too close to the sun. And they swing a little too close to the sun. And I don't think that was the case on Ukraine. I think that has to do with a specific commentator not willing to deal with valid critique or even valid questioning of a candidate that they like and that they've personally met, versus them trying to do this type of public trial of what is a pretty well-liked progressive who can win in very, very red districts in Maine. Like Troy Jackson wins in Trump country.
Curd is a curd.
PV is supposed to appeal to youth, not act like children.
That right there is a good way of phrasing it. And I think that the majority of what they do isn't act like children. I don't think that's the case. I do think that sometimes when I watch their social media feed and I see this type of, I mean, it seemed like high school, like a rumor spreading on social media, like the type of thing you'd get a PSA for about cyberbullying and why you shouldn't be a drama queen spreading unverified rumors. Like, that's what it seemed like to me. And then you see them calling candidates bitches and this and that. And it starts to feel like, yeah, you're in that COD lobby. Yeah, people can remember what it felt like to be in that COD lobby, but most people are out of that COD lobby. And most people were not posting like it's a COD lobby on the main feed of a political group that's trying to grow. Progressive Victory is one of the largest progressive groups in the United States for activists. It is. And I think that it should have the perception that is tied to that fact. Because when I see those types of moves, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like an organization making mistakes that it could have maybe afforded to make at the start of the organization. But now PV's been around for a while. I've seen a lot of leadership changes. And at this stage, they cannot be affording to making these mistakes, especially if they need to save their political capital to take stands on real moral issues like the war in Ukraine, or a moral stance on America's position on Taiwan a year, 2 years down the line, when it will likely become a much hotter topic, a much bigger issue in American public discourse. And if they want to have the political capital to do that, they can't have a bunch of other of these piffy, no benefit scandals or negative stigma attached to them. That's not to say that they need to be everyone's friend, but that is to say that they have no reason to be making more enemies than absolutely necessary to take the stances that are necessary and to get the recruitment that is necessary. And I shouldn't get the perception like they're children, like you said, from either a stream or a post or anything like this. You can know that it's a youth-led organization while still acting like serious political actors. And I think that they do that most of the time, but when they don't, it's so public and such on the socials that everyone sees it and it's going to stick out. And it's always going to stick out. Look, I understand the DNC is responding to Stephen Miller, calling him ugly. You know, that there is something to be said to their philosophy of, you know, there's an attraction, and that got a lot of interaction. There's an attraction to this type of thorniness that Trump himself has injected into politics, but has always been there to some degree. But there's a difference between being thorny and being so thorny nobody wants to walk near your field, because it's just so prickly, and nobody wants to associate with that. And if you're going to be losing people for genuine stands, you need to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's everywhere else. Because if they made this mistake once, there's a risk they could make this mistake again. That they could hear some unpublished rumor or some unknown statement that ends up not being, or republishing something that ends up not being accurate. So I want to give PV credit for taking a stance that might even get them boxed out of certain left-wing circles, but was the moral stance, was the electable stance it happens to be, and was the right stance. But I also want to say that in order for them to take those stances in the most, vigorous manner possible, in the most defensible manner possible, they can't be getting besieged everywhere else due to a bunch of mini scandals produced with no gain to the organization. Okay, and with that, I will look at the comments. What do you guys think? PV should stick to streaming. All they do is guarantee Republicans win. I disagree. I haven't seen anything that shows that. I haven't seen PV do anything that would help Republicans win. The Troy Jackson thing is the first time I've seen them do anything that was legitimately giving ammunition to the opposition, and in a context where a likely nominee for Senate could have ammunition used against them. That would be the only instance I've actually seen that happen. And it seems that they've acknowledged that mistake. Whether they will learn from it and grow from it, we'll have to wait and see. I obviously hope they do, because again, it does seem like when it comes to one of the issues of our time in these circles, they might be one of the, if not the only one, willing to stick their neck out for it.